don't know about ventilators, so here you go. My name's Alonzo, and here's how ventilators work. To first get you all to speed, what we're talking about is this thing. Basically, a ventilator, to put it very short, is a machine that allows the person using it to take in oxygen and take out any excess carbon dioxide that might be in their lungs. Now, why would there be a need for a machine to do something like this? Well, there are many cases where a person may have the inability or just may not be able to take in oxygen, and therefore ventilators are needed in this case to supply it. You can think of it like an inhaler when you have asthma. It's just something to let your lungs take in the oxygen needs without suffocating. Now, when talking about ventilators, there's also the concept of gas laws, which we should also take into account, so that we have a better understanding of how a ventilator works. To quickly state, there are three common gas laws that we should be accustomed with. So you have Charles' law, you have pressure law, and you have Boyle's law. Now, to get you all up to speed with what gas laws are, I'll go through each gas law and explain what each states. First, we have Charles' law. Charles' law states that the volume of a fixed mass of gas is proportionate to the temperature, assuming that the pressure is constant. So, as shown here in this small equation or diagram, basically what it states is that if I have this certain amount of volume, then the temperature will most likely be the same. The next law is the pressure law. This states that the pressure of a fixed mass of gas is directly proportionate to the temperature as well, also assuming that the volume is constant in this case. Again, here's an equation that shows how it works. So just like Charles' law, if the pressure is certain, so give it a number, then the temperature is the same. In both of these examples, they basically just entail that the temperature will dictate the number of either the volume or the pressure. Lastly, we have Boyle's law, which is the one that's completely different from the rest. Boyle's law states that the pressure of a fixed mass of gas is inversely proportionate to the volume, assuming the temperature is constant. So once again, shown here, this the formula of it briefly explained. What this basically states is that if the pressure is one way, then the volume is the opposite, and then vice versa. Now that we understand a bit more about what each law entails, now it's time to narrow it down to which law is actually being used when talking about a ventilator. Give it a little bit of a thought. When you think of a ventilator supplying oxygen, which law correctly explains how that works? To put it short, it's Boyle's law. But what's the reason why it's Boyle's law? Before we can understand why it's Boyle's law, we have to understand another concept with gases. And that is, gases move from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, always. So how does this apply to ventilators and Boyle's law and all that? So think of this. Right now, there is something called atmospheric pressure that's around us and everywhere else, right? And at the same time, our lungs have its own pressure, which is called interpulmonary pressure. So these two pressures are important in how Boyle's law applies. So right now, both pressures, both the atmospheric pressure and your lung pressure, which I'll refer to it as of now, are equal. So specifically, they are at 760. So following again, remember the higher concentration, the lower concentration rule. If one were to go lower, so if the pressure in the lungs were to go lower, then by law, the gases will follow and go into the lower concentration. So then that's when Boyle's law comes into play. Because how do we get that pressure to decrease, to allow the oxygen to actually go into your body? So the way the lungs, or the pressure in the lungs, decrease is through the volume. And like Boyle's law states, if the volume of a gas is small, then the pressure will be the opposite. So same thing here. Well, in this case, the volume increases when you breathe in. And when the volume increases, then the pressure in the lungs is decreasing. And in turn makes the atmospheric pressure bigger than the lung pressure. And because of that, it allows the oxygen to enter your lungs. So vice versa, when the lungs decrease, when they're exhaling, right? After the oxygen is been deposited to each capillary and is now given the carbon dioxide that's stored in the lungs, when you exhale, the lungs decrease in volume. And in turn, the pressure in the lungs increases. And that's why you push out carbon dioxide when you're exhaling. That's how Boyle's law works in simple terms. The last topic I would want to talk about is the DIY ventilators that exist. Now, granted, right now, during this coronavirus pandemic, there are many people that are trying to make their own substitutes or alternatives of ventilators instead of just going to the hospital. Now, while I admire that creativity and that innovation and very creative mindset, I don't condone it. Well, it is possible to make your own ventilator, of course, not being cheap, and doesn't require household items. It requires actual items you would need to build a ventilator, as shown right here. It's not as easy as taping together, gluing, and all that fun arts craft stuff. It's much more complicated to make one at home. While I'm not saying that it's impossible to create your own ventilator, by all means, go try it out. Make it for fun, just to see the science behind it. But don't depend on a DIY ventilator for your own personal use. I would suggest to go to the hospital to actually use a real ventilator rather than making your own. Not to discourage anyone to not make a DIY ventilator. Try making different types of ways to make a ventilator, whether it be very simple, very complex, and maybe you never know, one of them will actually work just like a real ventilator. It never hurts to try. But as of right now, where the virus is at its all-time high, it's best to not take that risk of depending on something like a DIY ventilator. Well, that's pretty much it for ventilators. I moved my setup from there to here because the light in the background was getting brighter and it didn't really look nice. But I hope you enjoyed my... who's there? Oh, come in. So, what's up? Can you help me with a DIY ventilator? You're making a DIY ventilator? Yeah, it's for a school project due tomorrow. I see. Yeah, because I'm actually making a video about... Oh, you're making a video now? Huh. But yeah, I can help you outside. It's fine. Okay, great. Well, what time's good with you? Oh, no, 4:20 is fine for me. 4:20. Okay, that's fine with me. Okay, great. I'll see you there. I'll see you there. Okay. See you. Yeah, that's my younger twin. He kind of gets into... He just comes in random.